Okay, go ahead.
So,
yes.
Okay. Welcome to You Are the Project. It's May 30th, 2017. Welcome those of you who can attend here physically and all of those of you who are online. We're going to start out today actually with a video we found that we thought was quite impactful. And it's a good follow-up from our last week when we talked about eating and junk food and all the problems that causes our bodies and the health elements, etc. So, Shay, why don't you go ahead and start that, and then we'll talk just a little bit about that and do some more with Peace Program. I noticed the smiley face here.
Yes.
Hope all of you out there are smiling.
The lights up. You want us to keep the lights up?
It's probably better to keep on, actually. Well, the people online will be listening.
Doctor says you're no longer.
Hang on. Okay.
Dying longer. People aren't living longer, they're dying longer. Sushi actually got on as heavy as 518 pounds.
6 months you'll be in dialysis, so you'll be dead.
I can't have that one candy bar a week because I didn't have an off switch. You're gonna be on this for the rest of your life. I wasn't making any progress.
We see this kind of cancer, there's no known cure.
I was flat on a gurney and they were debating, do I have triple bypass? I thought that my hypertension was genetic.
You have to control, and they were not giving me any hope at all. We had the cure, we've had it for decades.
What we know from cigarette smoking is the public doesn't like to be lied to.
We need education more than medication.
You can't blame doctors. They're not trained in this field.
I was really angry. I just could not understand why I didn't learn any of this in medical school.
The food industry is a $1 trillion industry. It uses very similar kind of tobacco-style techniques, paying off scientists and funding studies.
What is on our plate is really affecting our environment.
We have been putting the wrong fuel in our body.
Americans, Europeans have been poisoned by these animal foods. You can see what the person is eating by looking at the plaque in front of them. This plaque right there.
We're literally bypassing the problem without some serious lifestyle changes is coming back.
Foods are the cause
Of diabetes, of heart disease, of many forms of cancer, of hypertension, and if they're the cause, they can also be the solution.
I had to really look at it to see patients that I knew should be dead by my conventional training, alive and well, tumors melting away.
The power is not inside our hands as physicians. The power is inside your hands through your life choices. Don't let your culture hold your heart hostage.
Many symptoms and diseases just melt away even after being there for years.
The doctor said this woman alleges to have lupus, but we're not finding any evidence of it.
Doctor says you're no longer diabetic.
The most important decision anyone makes every day is what they elect to put in their mouths.
I need to make a change, but what do I do?
In the nutrition classes that I teach, a big component of that is taking people to the grocery store and doing hands-on training and teach people label reading.
I think it is something that will really work.
It's just my habits.
Probably 95% of America has no idea how to eat.
It's not so much about trying to invent a new way of life, but rather discovering the foods that are right here in front of you.
I think that's the gift of the plant-based diet, is it really kind of taps into all your different creative parts and you just start really experiencing a new variety. This is my garlic Alfredo. It's just 7 ingredients. Just start out with chopping some onions, chopping some garlic.
We're on the cusp of a paradigm shift. To me, this is the future of food.
I can't imagine another way that we could have a greater impact on our health.
Standing in front of me is obviously not a hindrance in bodybuilding to eat whole plant foods. To be able to push for 90 minutes and not get stopped by muscle cramps was amazing for our
Food is powerful.
I've been in medicine for over 30
years. And for the very first time, I can truly look someone in the eye and I can say, I can heal you. Why is it every person trying this?
It's the best thing that ever happened to me. It saved my life, it saved my marriage.
It's really nice to do things that will get results. Here, I was in control all along. It gave me freedom. This is where medicine should be.
Come on. What's on your plate?
That's good.
Very good.
It's got the screen share.
Okay, so they all saw that online too.
Yes.
Okay. We're back now. I think you'll admit that's a very powerful, impactful video. And it's a follow-up on what we talked about last week and starting to take junk food and some of the stuff we put in our body more seriously. Again, this is a cultural thing, and it's something that because everybody's doing it, we tend to feel like it's all right. We don't take it seriously. But there's a huge difference in, for example, Japan's culture, which has a very good food culture and a very little processed foods, and they have been very strict in not allowing chemicals to be in their food. And they have such a much lower incidence of heart disease and all kinds of things than we have. And again, the interesting thing there is they smoke much more than we do. I mean, a huge percentage of the population still smokes, and they also drink a lot. And yet they're living much longer than us and much healthier lives. And you can tell too when you meet a Japanese, somebody that's 40, 50, 60, I mean, they always look at least 10 or 20 years younger as well. So their diet is the one big thing that's saving them. And it isn't because they don't work as hard as that too. I mean, they work very long hours, very stressed out. A lot of times 6 to 8 weeks and that. So it pretty much, from anything I can analyze and determine, it must be from their eating, their diet. And they have very much a plant-based, vegetable-based diet. And again, they do not have many processed foods. And the few that they are starting to get in now is more from chains, food chains and things that have come over there. And so they're starting to have some instance now of people getting overweight. But I know even 30 years ago, probably less than 1% of the population was overweight. And even now, even though some of the fast foods that have been in, it's still less than 10%. And here in America, we're like 66, 67%. So again, I really want everybody to try to take this seriously. It's not easy. I realize this, and this is something that most Americans have been doing for years and decades, the way they've been eating. It's culturally ingrained. Yet everybody's doing it. It's very difficult to take it serious, but it is very, very serious. And unfortunately, 2/3, probably or more of the people here, are actually 89%. If it goes 87%, if it goes by national statistics, by the time you reach 65, you'll most likely be on some kind of regular medication. And the chance of sugar diabetes and arthritis and heart disease and cancers and everything extremely high. So we really want everyone in the project to avoid that. And some of you that already do have sugar diabetes and some of these ailments, these are actually reversible too. So you can actually start making some changes with this. So again, take it seriously, let it work in your mind. You're going to have to work this out. It's an addiction, and it's going to be probably as difficult, or in some cases more difficult than even giving up tobacco. But it really is every bit as important. And so we hope that will work in your minds, and that we work that out with your connectedness and working it out with God, and just little by little try to make those steps that are going to take you away from that. Start replacing the foods that you have in your refrigerator with healthy foods, healthy choices. In some cases, a person might even have to kind of change their friends and the people they hang out with. I know that if a person who's trying to stop smoking keeps hanging out with those other people that are smoking, going to places where they're lighting up after meals and that, it's almost impossible for them to stop the addiction there. So this may sound really harsh, but if you're always going out with somebody that's always going out eating junk food and everything else, unless you got a super strong will, you may just have to kind of change your lifestyle a little bit, and possibly even get some other friends you can hang out with, more, whatever it takes. Because again, this is a very serious issue. There's nothing other than character that is more important than your body and your health. So we'll continue talking on this, and if we could only do one thing, really, in You're the Project, and it would actually get people to seriously take on a healthy lifestyle and eat in a healthy way. I mean, it would have been many, many times worth the value of it. Because you remember the statistics when we talked about 65 years and older statistics. I mean, the amount that is paid out in medical costs from the time you're 65 until the average death at 78 years of age. I mean, it's close to $100,000. They range from estimates of 70,000 to I think about 114,000, and that's more than most people have saved. So I mean, you're going to be kind of going in debt and paying out money even from your Social Security just to cover your health costs. And this is again something that you'd be able to save if you didn't have those health problems, if you've eaten well. It's not only going to save you a lot of money and medical costs and all the pain and everything, but all those ailments and actually having those different elements of the heart disease, the sugar diabetes, the cancers, the arthritis, all those very painful things that make life so miserable. You'll have a much higher quality of life, plus living much longer, plus saving a lot of money. I mean, it's a win-win-win. So anybody that really, if you're sane and you analyze this at all, you can see that this is a super important decision and you better start working towards that. There's really no other choice. I mean, you have the choice to continue doing the same thing you are and go off the cliff with, 80, 70, 80, 90% of other Americans, or you can be one of the wise ones that doesn't go off the cliff. Have a little self-discipline and start doing things that will change that for you. So put the food, have somebody, if you have somebody maybe go out with you even shopping to see what really healthy shopping is, because most Americans, like you said in this video, probably over 95% have no idea, how to even eat healthy or what, good eating really is. And, they think that, just a small amount of vegetables and all the rest, this the typical diet, that's not healthy. But it really should be a good 50, 60, 70% of your foods should be, kind of plant-based vegetables and that, and then maybe some rices and different things like that. So you probably have to get used to it. But at least when you understand the ideal or understand, the standard of what really is healthy, then you can start measuring towards that instead of measuring against a very low standard that's really unhealthy and it's not really going to help you that much anyway. So little by little, you'll get your brains trained on that and your thinking changed and make those habits different. Remember, we talked about the 2-minute thing last week to at least give yourself a chance, at least on the sodas and junk foods that are really bad, blatantly bad. But even on the others, little by little, making those changes, and you'll start to like it too. Like with Shay, I mean, yeah, you love junk food and everything else, but once you started eating the 12 vegetable medley, which we recommend, and you actually did like it more than you thought, it's something that kind of grows on you. Your taste buds get so that they can taste the exquisite flavors and that in it. You'll actually even enjoy the other things you eat more once you get your taste buds kind of under control, so to speak. So there's all kinds of benefits for doing this. And of course, obviously your energy level and everything else is going to be so much better. Your whole quality of life will be better. Any questions or comments on that before we move into more of the Peace Program chart again and spiritual progress? Okay, we did, again, we talked about the chart last week with Peace Program and our progress chart. And I want to, this is another one of our mainstays that we talk about, again, because this goes to character and then, of course, health. I keep asking and hoping that all of you have at least read the STEPS pamphlet, the little 30-page book, and hopefully even read Peace Program book, but I have my doubts that all of you actually have. And so I'm actually going to take a little time to and kind of read through a little bit of the STEPS thing and as we contemplate this chart here. First of all, can you remember what we talked about last week? That this is up in Peace Pilgrim's case, and she did do it a lot faster than the average person does. But this is something that's possible. So it's one of these things too, where we can see, a high standard, and even though we might not be able to quite hit that high standard, we have a better chance of doing it if we have an example of this, and in fact, a modern day example. In her case, by the time of 29, she went through the ups and downs again, that we all have as we go through our childhood and our teenage years and the emotional struggles and identity crisis, and just, trying to figure it out, basically, trying to get a little bit in control of our emotion and understand everything that's going on with the chemicals and hormones in our body and the whole bit. Hopefully, most people, even if they're not quite mature by 29, maybe by 39, 49 or somewhere around there, they'll get to where they, fairly balanced as far as being able to handle not getting overly emotional or getting overly dramatic or getting too extreme or doing things that are too crazy. Where basically if you met a person that was to the stage that probably Peace Program was at 29, you'd consider them a pretty solid person. Someone they're not going to be erratic, they're not going to be all up and down and never know where they're at, or someone that you'd have a hard time trusting. They're going to be a pretty solid person. They'll have their problems. I mean, they'll have their things that they can get upset like someone else could, but it won't be extreme, and it will be much more controlled, and it will be much more balanced. Now that again is kind of the stage, and that's where she had that all-night thing where she basically decided to give herself to God and ask for God to be, use herself as a tool. But at least she had that balance underlying there. Because again, if you don't have the basic emotional growing up taken care of, you're going to have a real hard time on this more of a spiritual journey part where you're at least touching, the altruistic part of your nature. You still have ups and downs between your ego and the altruistic nature of the ego and the kind of God self. But at least it will be basically kind of a balanced, growth and not so erratic and crazy and, off the charts and out of control. So everyone, I don't know if you can think back in your lives. Of course, most of us can remember when we were teenagers and what a crazy time that was, and going through that, and then through our 20s and so on and so forth. A lot of us in here are a little bit older, and we probably, hopefully, made it through at least this stage of the kind of the emotional growing up. Still, it doesn't mean that it's completely done, because there's a lot of people in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, or in fact, all the way until they die, are still having troubles and struggles with their emotions. But hopefully, get that under control. You can start making the real progress then, and also that dedication. Now, a person doesn't have to do this. You realize there's a choice, and most people choose not to. I mean, most people choose to just live the typical way that television teaches us, and that every kind of our culture teaches us, and it's all about material things, and it's all about trying to get happiness from getting this high of an income, or getting this nice of a house, or getting whatever it is, and chasing things that everybody else chases, and many times chasing that to the extreme where they ruin their health, and that which is the sad part. At least if you're a person that say had a steady 9-to-5 job and didn't ruin their health overworking, you'd have some advantage over somebody that actually ruins their health, so-called chasing the dream. The dream that only comes to about 8 in 100 Americans anyway, as far as getting to millionaire status. But so I would at least advise not going so extreme in the material chase that you end up ruining your health. That's one thing that at least you could avoid that pitfall that most Americans have. But then again, whether or not you're going to decide to actually take the spiritual route, which it's a road less traveled. It's kind of like in Scott Peck's book there, The Road Less Traveled. Many of you might know that book that came out, I think it was 20, 30 or more years ago. And a person kind of goes to a different drummer, and they they actually start connecting more and realizing that materialism and all these things are not really making them that happy, that they continue to be frustrated, that they continue to not be able to ever quite satiate that desire for happiness and for getting enough, and always thinking there's not enough, and just wanting more and more and more, never really knowing when is enough. Once a person comes to that vantage point, I would say that wise point, which Peace again came to when she was 29. And again, that's younger than most we come to. Most people, if they even do get to that point where they really are willing to try a different way and truly try the spiritual way, not just superficially, with so many people since I think, but I mean really make that a lifestyle. Then from that point on, they would be on the true, what Peace Pugman called as the true spiritual growth. This other has been, people might think they're even doing something spiritual during this time, but most of it's really an emotional type thing, and they're never able to maintain that spiritual level. And it just immediately kind of dissipates. So they might get it once a week, possibly at Sunday school, or maybe they do something nice, but it's just very, very temporary, and it doesn't seem to maintain. Again, the maintenance comes when you take true spiritual living. Now, this is something I think there could be a number of questions and comments about too, but is there anything on this as far as the understanding up through this point here? Questions, comments? Okay. What I want to talk with you about right here, and just read a little bit out of the booklet, is this portion, going about this area right here. Well, actually, a lot of this will be covering, really getting to that point, and then of course the further steps in the purification of thoughts, and that's just definitely getting into this higher area before you can finally get to the ultimate area where you truly are connected, feeling 8 signs and 10s, and the joy that everybody really is chasing after. That really great price. Let's read just a little bit, and so we won't get too serious. Catch. But now we might get serious. So we're gonna,
Sorry.
Yeah, it's got to be joyful too. That's another thing that is interesting too. Is whether it be peace program or Red Glove, a lot of the ones, and you notice now even Dalai Lama, he's always got a smile on his face. He's very joyful. Even jokes quite a bit and everything else. That's another thing I think that you'll find as a person truly gets up into those higher areas. I mean, there's a tendency, of course, that we get. It's good to get serious about something, but it's not good to take ourselves overly seriously, and that always comes into ego and everything else. You got to realize the task you're doing may be serious, but if you take yourself too serious and think of ourselves as too important, and too much the ego comes in, that really makes our task, very difficult. So you got to be throwing some humor in. You got to be laughing. You got to be, having those lighthearted, not frivolous times, but lighthearted moments, to enjoy and make it easier as we're going. I'm going to do this without. Okay, it's on that page. We're over here, 5 in the steps pamphlet there. If this is like,
Oh, that's okay. I'll listen.
okay, I do have extra ones if you want.
Because I have really, I'll listen.
Okay, anyway, peace program, and I'll paraphrase a part of this. I won't read every single word, but she said, she talks about inner peace, and then she talks about them in a framework, but there's nothing arbitrary about the number of steps and the order of steps. For one person, a step may be the last step for somebody else. Some people may need to work on their health first. Some people may need to work on something within patience first. She mentioned that basically, the first step for one may be that the last step for another. Also to start with things that are easiest for you. So everybody, if you're really, especially when you're meditating, I hope that all of you are doing your meditation. That makes a huge difference. Although, again, it may seem time-consuming in the beginning, it becomes time-saving. And you find that you're doing things a lot more effectively and not wasting so much time. But you really want to, find out just what it is that's maybe the easiest step for you. And it's going to be in 2 categories. We talked a little bit about this in the seminar. One category is things that you should stop or not be doing. The other category are things that you should be doing. So just take the simple, easy steps first, and that could easily be something on cutting out a little bit of junk food again. Could be cutting out some of the television time, as far as stop things that you might want to stop. The positive things to be just being a little bit nicer, being a little bit more caring, being a little bit more patient. Being a little bit more assertive, courageous, whatever those little things are. A lot of it will just start with little habits that you're either trying to get rid of, or good habits you're trying to replace that with. So figure out what those things are, and that's not something I can really, or anybody can really tell you exactly, because you are the one that lives in your body. You're the one that lives with you. Each person is individual and unique, and they have their own time and their own things that they have to work through. We can give general principles and general truths, but each person, it isn't cookie cutter. It's something that needs to be worked through, and I'm sure that's why Peace Program said it's kind of very much an individual. She called it a do-it-yourself project. You are the project that is a do-it-yourself project. Okay, in the first place, she mentioned preparations that she thought were required. The first preparation, she said, was a right attitude towards life, and to stop being what she called a superficial liver. Where just kind of going along on the surface, not really delving deeply into life, just kind of going along like everybody else, more or less like sheep. You got to start figuring out, the whys of life, and what really is the purpose of life, and what really is the best way to obtain happiness and the best way to help others. So many people choose not to even delve into the deeper issues of life and what truly is important. They just go along living like everybody else and pretty much getting the same results as everybody else, and that's concerning health as well. And they're basically going off the cliff like everybody else. Okay, then there's, then she says basically they never find anything really worthwhile. And then there's the matter of having a meaningful attitude for the problems that life may set before you. Many people, and there's a video, did we show that? That's the one that we didn't show, that we want to show next time. It was about when you complain about everything. It was talking about different types of people.
Oh yeah, that's what
how they complain and whine about life and everything, and the pessimist. A person that's always complaining and not seeing the whole picture. Any trouble or problem that would come into life, they would look at it as a big problem, and as something to complain about, and as something that they really hate and just have very bad attitude towards it. So rather than growing from that, and even appreciating the growth that it might give to them, they would be complaining about it and really learn nothing from it. So it's very important to have the proper attitude. And if once we start understanding the whole picture and what life's purpose really is about, and I strongly believe, and I think most of you believe too, it's about us becoming a better person, overall better person, a superior version of ourselves. Then we start to understand that a lot of these little conflicts and problems and things that we have in our life are helping us to become more patient, more loving, more caring, more courageous, whatever it might be. Then we don't complain about it so much and can start, looking at it. I don't totally subscribe to the belief that everything happens for a reason, because sometimes I think we do some pretty stupid things, stuff we're told over and over again, do things that are done. And I guess if there's a reason for it, we can learn from it, but so oftentimes we don't. But I do think that everything that happens to us can be a learning experience. Hopefully we won't keep doing the same thing over and over again and not learning from it. I did have the experience when I was in my 20s where I thought I was always being tested by God. And when I really analyzed it later on, I realized I was doing some things that I was creating my own problems and creating my own tests, so to speak, and my own unnecessary difficulties. And once I learned how to deal better with people, deal better in business and everything, I didn't have so many of these so-called testing things happen, because I was learning more how to deal more effective with life, with other people, and not doing foolish things that were causing these unnecessary problems and challenges. But anyway, even if you subscribe that everything happens for a reason, make sure that whenever something happens to you that is not good, that you do learn from that, and hopefully you don't have to reduplicate that if it's something that's avoidable. Now, there are things that are sometimes unavoidable. I mean, accidents of time. We can't, there are sometimes, shit happens, or accidents do happen. But for the most part, there's quite a bit of control that we can actually have in a modern nation. If we were in a third world nation, I mean, you really literally might not know, where you're going to be able to eat, where you're going to be able to sleep sometimes, if you're in a really bad situation, if it's a war-torn zone, when you might be captured or killed, or, all kinds of things happen. So you really have life out of control there. But to quite a degree, including our food choices and, people we kind of choose to associate with, our freedoms and everything, we do have a lot that is under our control in a first world nation, and we really should be happy and appreciative of that. So that was the attitude thing. The second preparation she talks about is bringing our lives into harmony with the laws that govern the universe. Now, the laws that govern the universe, you can look at, there's laws that govern health. There are laws that govern, kind of business, so to speak, and at least certain practices that will help you be better in business. There are certain laws of relationships. I mean, a person can ignore that. I mean, in relationships, for example, a person can totally ignore, being kind to someone and just be, brutally honest, or, do things that piss people off, or do things that people make them hate them. I mean, they can do that, but that's going against the laws of making good friends and making good relationships. So obviously, you're not going to get good results doing that. A person can ignore the universal laws of health, and they can put very bad things into their body. They can drink and they can do all these things, but they are going to get those very bad results. It's not something that you can just think, I'm special, so that these universal laws are not going to affect me. I can smoke, I can drink, I can put all this crap in my food, and it's not going to affect me. That's just not true. We may believe that's true, but if you don't deal with reality, reality will deal with you. That's a saying my dad used to always say. So you can deny reality, you can think it's this way or whatever you want to do, but eventually you're going to run into the brick wall of reality, and it's going to teach you, maybe in a very hard way, that your belief wasn't correct, and so you better adjust more and more to reality, or to these universal laws. So that's the next thing, is kind of trying, the universal laws of psychology and spiritual, these different things. Now, sometimes it's not so well defined, and oftentimes we're kind of misinformed on even the, say, the laws of spirituality. We may think that we know them. In fact, whatever church we've gone to, sometimes in the family, sometimes our culture, is telling us that a spiritual person is like this, or a spiritual person has to do this, or can't do this, or whatever. And a lot of us just kind of follow along, blindly doing that. And a lot of times we may miss the really important point of being loving, because there's so many duties to do, so many things you have to do or don't do nots, and all these kind of things. And there's a quote that says a great character is not built by not doing wrong, but rather by actually doing good. So characters aren't, people a lot of times just think, if I just don't do wrong, if I just avoid doing this or obey this commandment or whatever, that will keep you out of trouble. Probably, don't steal, don't do some of these things. That will keep you out of trouble. That's true. But the truly strong character is going to actually be created by actually going out and doing good things, and doing things that actually strengthen you and help others in that. So always need to remember to be doing the part that is actually a positive doing. And You're the Project, of course, is all about that. Actually doing those positive things that aren't just maintenance activities, which a do not thing in a sense would be maybe a maintenance thing. But it's actually making forward progress by doing things that actually strengthen us and make us better. Okay, so that's the bringing our lives into harmony with the laws. And the laws, again, that's going to take some time. It takes some maturity. It takes some analyzing. It takes a little bit of experimenting. Now, hopefully, on our experimenting, we don't have to learn everything firsthand. There are some personalities, some people, and you probably know some, that seem to have to learn everything firsthand. They just can't learn from somebody else who's made the same mistake, or somebody else that's gone through the hard thing. They have to do it themselves and find out themselves. This is the hard way to do it, the really hard way to do it. And sometimes there's irreparable damage that happens that way. The wise person, and I'm sure, whether you look at Jesus or Buddha or other great people, they were very good at vicariously experiencing something without having to actually do it themselves. Something that's very foolish, something that's harmful to health, something that's harmful to the spirit, whatever, or something that's addictive, whatever. They didn't actually have to do it. They could see the effect of others doing that and realize that was foolish, and they didn't have to experience that or go down to those depths. And this is, the wise way of doing it. Okay, now another thing she talks about is, she says she got busy on a very interesting project. This was to live all the good things I believed in. I did not confuse myself by trying to take them all at once, but rather, if I was doing something that I knew I should not be doing, I stopped doing it, and I always made a quick relinquishment. And she talks about, she says, you see that the easy way, that's the easy way. Tapering off is a long and hard. Many people, they do choose to kind of do the tapering off thing. And those that have, if anybody's ever tried to stop smoking or some of these other things too, or stop drugs, usually the tapering off approach does not work too well. Yet, it basically just tempts them back when they have that cigarette again or whatever. So in her case, and I think in a lot of people's case, it would be better to, rather than just taper off a little bit, just cut it off, completely. And then again, like we talked about with health, if it's something where you could go back a little bit to junk food, a little bit to some of that process, do it maybe after you totally cut it off for a while. You got yourself back in control, and then maybe go back to it, or a person might choose not to go back to it at all. But, and bad habits, so this is the same thing, and there's all kinds of addictions that we know these type of things. It's better not to try to taper off on those, especially if it's something that's either damaging our health, damaging our relationships, damaging our soul, whatever it might be. The quick, again, cutting off is the superior way of doing it, the fastest way of doing it. And that shows real result. There's a very good quote that says, the weak indulge in resolutions while the strong act. So many times you'll hear people, they'll talk about, I'm going to go on a diet, just after New Year's, or I'm going to cut out junk food, in 3 weeks from now after this trip, or I'm going to start doing this after this. And it never really happens, because they're not really convinced. If a person truly is going to do something, they usually will do it right then. I mean, it comes to the point where they say, man, enough of this, I'm going to do it. And they don't wait until, I'm going to do, I'm going to have 3 more big meals or 3 more this and that. No, they do it now. If the result is truly there. Now, that isn't always 100% the case, but in most cases, from what I've observed, and even in my own personal experience, when I really decided and strongly felt that I should stop something, I really feel it. And it really is resolved that I'm not going to indulge in the resolution of entertaining myself or, saying that I'm going to do it after this or after this or after this. I usually just do it right then. And then it's kind of a done deal. So that's another thing each person has to kind of work out for themselves and be kind of truly honest with themselves, I'd say too. Another problem, I think a lot of people are not really honest with themselves. They have an image of themselves or an image of, how well they're doing. and sometimes it isn't really quite an accurate image. And so that's another thing that each person kind of has to come to terms with. And a person can deceive themselves for a long time, and many times people deceive themselves for months, for years, even decades. But obviously you won't be getting the progress, because if you can't even know what the problem is, or even understand what your weaknesses are, I mean, how in the world are you ever going to solve a problem? Even like with the worksheets writing down, if you don't even recognize the problem, you can't even talk about it, of course you'll never come to a solution on it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing I wanted to throw in there. That wasn't actually written in here, but that's one that I think is pretty powerful and important. Okay. Okay, the other thing it talks about here is she said she did something she knew she should be doing and cut off the things she knew she should be stopping. And as soon as she recognized what those things were, she said, I got busy on that. And then it took a little while for the living to catch up with the believing, but of course it can. And now if I believe something, I live it. Otherwise, it would be perfectly meaningless. And it says, as I've lived according to the higher light that I had, I discovered that other light was given, and that I opened myself to receiving more light as I lived the life I've been given. So once we start overcoming these little things, then we're given the next thing and the next thing, and that's when we're really starting to make upward progress. And there's a great deal of satisfaction in that. There's a great deal of strength that comes in that, a great deal of joy that comes with that. And things start becoming, easier and easier. It's like anything you start, especially if it has value, it'll be kind of difficult when you first start. The nature of it is, it seems to be difficult. As we practice and do that, it becomes easier and easier and easier. And we become stronger and stronger, and then it becomes kind of natural to us. It becomes something that's easy and natural. And then we're also experiencing the joy of having that newfound power or newfound skill or whatever you want to call it. And character, it's really I believe it's a building process. It's not something that someone can just say, okay, I'm going to become this stalwart, heroic, courageous, loving, balanced character. I'm just going to do it here. I'm going to do it in 6 months. It just doesn't happen that way. It's the most valuable thing that we can do in this life. And of course, it does take some time. It's not just a month thing or even a year thing or even a decade thing. Now, even for Peace Pilgrim, as advanced as she was, and she did do it quickly, to 29, she was, I'm sure, a lot advanced of most 29-year-olds. But even the totally giving her life to God, or totally, we're getting connected, that took her another 15 years. Even after she'd made that determination that she was going to really make that, number one in her life. So it's something that does take a preparation time and a working on. But I'm sure, and she talked about during that time, she was having a better life than normally would be the case with a typical 29-year-old to 44. I'm sure that she had more joy in her life. She had less problems. She had better health. She talked about how greatly her health increased. And in fact, for the last 43 years of life, pretty much from the time she was 29, she said she never had a headache or a pain or anything like that, or cold. I mean, just it's amazing what it can have effect even on your health too. So she again was able to obtain those blessings and those things that even a billionaire, can't buy or purchase. So that's something that it's something that's not talked about a lot, and people really don't understand fully how desirable that state really is. But just as our body is the only place we have to live, our body is the only place we have to feel. And it's all, and the way we feel is through our mind and through our soul. So if a person doesn't develop their mind, for example, and their soul too, but they don't develop their mind and it's always going, crazy, just very unbalanced up and down, worrying about things, not able to live in the present, just kind of an out of control, worrying type mind, it's going to be very difficult to have a lot of periods of joy and happiness and peace in that. It just doesn't happen, because you always have to live with the mind that you have, you always have to live with the body that you have, and the soul portion, of course, is becoming more and more connected with the higher power of God. And so that's something that, again, kind of what we call the pearl of great price, working on our minds, getting them under control. Meditation is very good for this, disciplining ourselves. Obviously, our body can discipline. These are things that we're working on, the true project. I mean, the project. It's so much more important than business and these other things. There's so many people, and I don't know how to emphasize this enough. Again, most people, their only and main project becomes business and making money. But they're not working, well, obviously on their health in most cases, but they're not really, a lot of times, even working on their mind, and often and almost always not really working on their soul or their character, that connectedness, because they're so busy doing this. It's all about me, what am I get, how I get more money, how more. So even the very few, well, 8 out of 100 that even make millionaire status, I say the vast majority of them have not really worked on the character, have not really worked on the mind, haven't really developed the H2 happiness quotient we talked about. So not only has their health suffered, so they're in this body that they're with 24/7, even though they may have $1 million house, and they're not able to enjoy because of the bad health. But then they've got a mind that's just, not stable and everything going like this, and it's not connected, and it's not appreciating, and it's not happy, and it's not able to live in the now. And so they can't even enjoy what they have. I mean, there's so many people that have huge amounts of money, and again, could be living in a $10 million home or whatever, and they're not enjoying it or appreciating it at all. I mean, what good does it do to live in a mansion or live in Hawaii or whatever else if you can't appreciate it and enjoy it? I mean, you get no happiness bang for your buck. I mean, it's just foolish. The number one thing, even somebody that's working towards becoming a billionaire, maybe that would be something they're good at making. But if they're not working on, again, the mind and the character while they're doing that, it's going to do them no good. The happiness studies are replete. The 450,000 person study I mentioned before from Princeton, I mean, beyond 75,000 a year on average, there is no measurable increase in happiness. I mean, that's a very exhaustive study. There's just no way of getting around that. You have to be doing something besides just making money to be even able to enjoy that. I mean, it's just the way it is. And the wise person, because a lot of us won't make over 75,000 a year, even get there, and most of us, very, very large majority will never make the millionaire status. But we can, the thing that is fair, is we can develop our minds and our characters more than even, say, a millionaire or a billionaire would, so we can actually be enjoying more than that. And that should give everybody a lot of solace and comfort that you can be actually happier than those 8 out of 100 people, or even those 1 out of 1,000 or 1 out of 100,000 might get to billionaire or 100 millionaire status. If you do those things that they're not doing, and there's nothing to be envious of. If you see somebody, I mean, everybody would like to have some money. I mean, it'd be nice if you won $1 million lottery. But again, if you haven't developed those things, if you haven't taken care of your health, if you haven't done the mind, and if you don't do the character thing, you're not going to enjoy it much anyway. You're going to go back to your same happiness level in about 6 months to a year. Studies show that as well. So I hope that's really understandable. I mean, I'll talk about this in different ways and different times because it's so against what culture kind of teaches us and what we're taught, by the media, by everything else. But it's so true. And the more that people start understanding that, studies in psychology are just as valid as studies in science. Now, it's true they haven't quite refined the testing methods quite as much, but we're getting more and more data on this. And even, your major universities, Harvard and those different things, spiritual studies, happiness studies, the happiness class they have on campus, again, is the #1 class on campus now. We're starting to realize, the value of these things that we've kind of known about and spiritual leaders have been trying to teach us about and everything, but now it's becoming more quantified and more, understandable in measurable ways of just what the effects are on the human mind, on the endorphins, on our immune systems, all these different things. Finding out that these, learning how to be happy or learning how to be appreciative, controlling our mind, meditation, these things are just immensely helpful and useful. Okay, that's kind of where I wanted to go today. I hope I've at least, let's see, what have we got time? I hope I've at least got you to where you have more of an interest in those of you that haven't read this, that you will read it. If there was one other thing that I would say just before, okay, there are those that, she did say this, there are those that know but do not do. Right. And I actually wanted to give, there was 2 great examples in here that she gave that I thought were nice, really nice. There was one example that she gave of a person, there was a truck driver, I think, where he met her and he says, "You seem so happy and you're out doing, helping people and this type of thing." And he said, "Oh, yeah." And he talked about, "You seem to have that energy or that connection or whatever." And he said, "I had that once." And she said, "Oh, really?" And he said, "Yeah, I was stranded in this town one time and there was a storm or something, I couldn't get out, and I just started going out and helping people." And I said, "I just had this endless energy all day long, and I just felt really joy, and I was really happy for that day." And she said, but I've never gotten it since that time. And she said, "Well, why don't you do something else?" I said, "Well, that doesn't pay money." And he's of course back on the material thing, measuring everything by money. And unfortunately, that is the standard, that pretty much everyone uses. If you're making money for it, it's valuable. If you're not making money, then it's somehow not that valuable. But our inner growth does lie in the direction of, improving ourselves and things that usually are not paid, not paid for so much. But again, it's kind of the balance that goes back and forth on this. We're kind of getting our priorities and realizing that our spiritual growth and our health and those things are at least equally as important as making money is. Now, the other interesting one she talked about was an architect who she met, and he was very miserable when she met him and stressed out and everything, and he was very influenced by her. And she met him again, I think it was 2 or 3 years later, and he just was so happy, and his wife talked about how happy he was and that he was getting even more business than he had before. And what had happened is he didn't have to change his profession. In fact, she talked about that. She said a lot of people don't really need to change their profession. They just need to change the way they go about doing their profession and do it in more of a loving way, really thinking of the customer and not just thinking how he can make more money on the customer.
Right.
And this particular architect, rather than trying to design larger homes than the person really needed, where you make more money because of the plans and that, he started designing homes that were well within their budget and recommending they do this. And even though he made less per home that he did the architecture on, his reputation, of course, spread, and more people wanted to use him. And he actually ended up making more money than he had before. And he had great satisfaction because he was really doing a service for them and truly thinking of their budget and what was best for them, rather than just trying to get more money from each customer. And so that make a huge difference just in the way we approach doing the business, the way we do it. This is one too. Again, it's not always easy, and even though sometimes you start out the intention, you have real world problems and real world difficulties. But the golden rule is a pretty standard thing and a very good thing to live by. Is basically put yourself in the other person's position. Whether you're talking with them about business or whether you're talking friendship, whatever it might be, and truly try to do the best thing that would be the best for them, even if it may not be monetarily the best for yourself. That can be a hard one to do, especially people that are in sales and that too. There are sometimes in sales where you really feel strongly that that person would benefit, say, by the product you have. In those cases, of course, I think it would be incumbent on the person to do their best to try to convince them that it really is good for them. But if a person can see that, well, actually this may be too stressful, or maybe the timing isn't right or whatever, then sometimes we just have to let it go. And again, lovingly, just basically keeping love at the center of the things that we do. This is a tricky one. And I sometimes struggle even a little bit myself when I'm introducing you at the project, because I don't want to be too pushy with the person. And it's true, I'd be very happy, for somebody to join in you at the project. I mean, of course, then we start to grow, and that's a nice thing too, and get things going there. But I don't want to push too hard, and I won't push too hard. But then again, I realize that most people aren't understanding how valuable it really could be to them. And I see so many people, in fact, the majority of people that really aren't disciplined, that really would be helped by this type of system. So I'll just do my best to lovingly and kindly, tell them this, just because I care for you, I gotta at least tell you this much. Hopefully you'll check out this much. And then, of course, if you don't want me to talk about it anymore, I won't talk about it. But sometimes we can be a little bit too timid too, when it comes down to it, because it's not so much that we're really concerned about them, we're concerned about, maybe somebody cutting us off, or maybe somebody, reacting wrong or whatever. But love also goes beyond that, because if you really feel like something's good for someone, you will do your best effort, to explain it and to help them be guided, whether it be this or whether it be going, say to the spiritual center that you're over there, or going to some other group that that they'd be very much helped by. Obviously, if we love our children or friends, we're going to try to, direct them in a way that we think is going to be the best for them, directing them to the gym, in fact, whatever it might be. This is something that each person has to kind of work out. And then if you're doing your meditation, I think we do a better job of this too. And I don't know how many of you have got your watches that are ringing once an hour. And there's apps and things to do with that. That's a really good one. Again, that will help on your productivity, because you can quickly take an analysis of what you've done in the past hour. And believe me, even when you're pretty good at this, you're going to have a lot of times when you're just on autopilot, you just get caught up in things, especially if you're sitting down at the computer or some of these things. You kind of think you're doing something important, but you got to really, really, really focus on those activities, those things that are going to really make that difference, in your health, in your relationships, in your finances, a whole bit. And to all of you that are out there that are doing business now, I can't emphasize this enough either. you've got to narrow down and be doing those 20% of the activities that cause 80% of the results, instead of doing that 80% that only gets you 20% of results. And a lot of that is just maintenance type thing. Each of you are going to have to work this out. But I can almost guarantee, unless you're a very unusual person, you're probably wasting a whole bunch of time on things that aren't really getting you, what you want to get, and not really getting the results. I have to constantly remind myself of this too. It's something that's kind of a lifelong process, I suppose. But just make sure that you're doing it as effectively as you possibly can, wasting as little time as you can. And then if you are going to waste time, so to speak, make sure it's your leisure. It's okay in your leisure to, I don't know that it's really wasting time, but it's okay to do whatever you want to do in your leisure time. But when you're working hard and having some pain going through it and the stress and everything, just at least make sure that time is effective in getting you what you want. So I hope you're working on your A activities in all the different areas. And we'll go right now into seeing how we did on our goals. Any questions or comments on what we talked about? Okay. All right, why don't we start with Shay on your goals. How did you do?
This week wasn't as good as last week. Last week I did my 3 papers I read. This week I only did 1, unfortunately.
Now you've got to tell tonight, everybody out there, if you haven't caught up today, you got to tell midnight tonight, and we might even, like I said, we're being a little bit lax here.
Yeah,
on
sure.
this month, because we want to
Right.
get a little bit more of the dynamics and everything going there. But you can catch up. I've got to catch up a little bit on mine tonight too.
Okay.
So we'll catch up.
Let's see. The gym, last week I did my 3 times a week, which is good because I wanted to make sure I did that. Yo hablo a little bit of Espanol, but so I'm trying to mix my Spanish words with the English.
Right.
So I've been doing the app, doing that each night, which is really great. Let's see. I'm trying to think. Spiritually, I've been meditating each morning. I should probably maybe go outside more so and do it. I think that's about it so far.
Okay. But you've got your training. At least you're doing your 2 times a week on your training.
I did 3.
Or you did the full 3?
Yes,
Okay.
I did.
So you're good there. All right. Let's see. What about you, Darren?
Okay, I've been pretty much on target. I've added a few new goals. Over the weekend, I had some really good leisure, relaxing, reflection, and that really covered a broad area. It covered the mind, spirit, and soul, because CNN had a good special on for JFK, because they were celebrating his 100th birthday, and his daughter Caroline said she tried to explain to her own daughter and son, about their grandpa, about her dad, but they weren't getting it. So she did this documentary, and it was very, very good. Because even though I lived through the 60s, I was still kind of young. So it was a good review, and I was saying to my husband, I says, "Gee, I wonder if anybody else is watching, saying, gee, that's me in the crowd, or that's me," because we really lived through it, so it's kind of exciting, because even though some people think you're from Abraham Lincoln time, but so it's very, very good. And then we switched it to Michael Jackson, and that was a very enlightening documentary also, because it showed a lot of things that I never even knew that he was as sincere as he was having children. And he really took fatherhood very seriously. And then I says, gee, it's like basically OJ's kids too. I says, it's a shame they don't have those talented people in life now. But then at the very end, they had another documentary showing how his kids are really successful, So it just shows how you can't judge a book by its cover, and just to be yourself completely, because you were kind of cruel with him, and his little girl at the time was saying, "What does wacko jackal mean? What does freak mean?" And he says, "Nothing bad, just different." And that really opens your mind to just be you, be different, get out of the box and do things, and then so that was the mind, spirit, soul. And then meeting some new people that were, I went somewhere where I wasn't supposed to go, but I said, why not? Because I never am going to follow the so-called in-box thought. And I knew the person had passed away, and they had a beautiful service for this person. And then afterwards, they had another service, and somebody dropped the ball on it. And I said, no, I didn't know about it. When is it? And they go, oh, maybe I shouldn't have told you. I go, why not? And then they go, well, we were invited either, and oh, you better check, you better ask permission first. I said, why would I? I said, it's a service to honor somebody. If I know the person, why can't we all go, right? So I went to this other class in the meantime, because there was a really good class that was good for mind, body, and soul that was at the center. That was a continuation of a class we had taken at the Crossberry Plus. And then when that ended, I saw the same person that was shaking like a leaf saying, are you really going to go? I go, of course I'm going to go. I says, because I'm going to make a statement that there are no cliques. So that showed assertiveness. I was thinking of Shay. So I made a little bombshell there.
Oh, I don't think you had that much fun with assertiveness too.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. But I said I'm going to even be more bold. You know, I said that's going to be my goal. And that's what that person says. They go, oh, you're already a sir. I said, that's what can be even more bold. And then this person said to me, but what if they shun you and they throw you out? I said, doesn't matter. I'm going to make a statement. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. But it was great because when I went downstairs in that building, I stayed there, maybe about 2 hours. I met some beautiful people that were fantastic. And then they invited me to another documentary, you know, so it's really great. It's just mind blowing. Yeah, that's right. So I'll wrap it up real quick. And then as far as my exercise, just staying on track, still walking from right now the Tropicana down to Valleys, which is basically the Tropicana to Flamingo. And here in Vegas, we have bigger blocks than most places in the U.S., you know, so that's pretty good. So it's just been really good.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
And then Monday.
Yes, and
She'll
then,
be with me on the
yeah,
You're gonna
Tuesday.
be trying to
yeah,
find
we would
something.
say on Monday. I was
No,
saying
no worries, it's gotta happen.
oh, yeah,
this
yeah,
Monday.
It is,
that's
yes.
funny. It was just the Memorial Weekend. I said, oh, maybe. But it was a good thing I didn't go because then I would have missed out on all this.
All that stuff, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good, very good. So, joyful?
I keep my stuff on a calendar so that when I'm looking at it, it's all filled up and I go, wow, look what I've done, look what I've done. So I didn't start till like, what, halfway through the month. My meditating twice, I've always wanted to do that and stay on it, so it really helps to mark it down, and I've been doing that twice a day. Walking, I decided I was going to walk to the park, which is about 3 miles, I think, from my house. And because it's so warm, I have to do it early in the morning, and it gets it out of the way. The food stuff, I am aware of the vegetables, and I'm not going to really knock myself out on it, but I do realize that the more you talk about it, the more it starts to
Sink in.
kind of, yeah. Well, no, it's not so much sink in, but the desire, maybe I do want to do that. I'm resistant, so I just like.
Had a pretty good video to boost that as well today.
Yeah, that was a good video.
Yeah.
In fact, I want to share that with the person that I wanted you to meet. I think it's tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow, we can show that tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a
So
good
the
one.
exercises are twice a day, and the
Maybe not
walking,
put that in the questions.
the food stuff, and then I did a surprise number, and so, but my social stuff is I'm mingling in different areas. I mingle in these areas not so often, but they're becoming more often now. So just being open to it, realizing that the judgment of the things that I get, I notice them and then let them go. Notice it and let it go. It just makes life more interesting that way.
That's interesting. That's good. Yeah, that's it.
Very good.
Yeah.
All right. And for mine, I pretty much did everything. I did my twice a week training, which I always do. I did the extra 2 little things of running or kind of bicycle, added that in. I got that done yesterday. Let's say I have to do my training tonight, so I finished that one for Tuesday and Friday. Definitely on the computer and cell phone related, including Instagram now.
Mhm.
Different things. I've been learning some new skills, and when I quickly asked Shay to do it, she said, "Well, you can do that."
Yes.
So I definitely spent more than the half hour that I originally set on that, and it's kind of nice learning some new skills there. Still doing the meditation every day. I've given myself just 1 day off. If I missed, I got the 6 days last week, but at least 30, sometimes 40, 50 minutes in a day. That's been very good. Relationship, of course, that's always great, and we've been doing some interesting activities.
Going to the masterminds on Saturdays.
Yeah, I've been going to the mastermind group, which has been great for meeting other people and learning some new business skills and things on the computer. Leisure, yeah, even though we've been super busy with the project, we still try to get at least a couple hours in on the weekdays.
Mm.
And then
you went to see the shack too, which is good.
yeah, that's been a week or two ago. I was out another movie this last week. I guess tonight, the piano, I haven't done my 25 minutes, so I do have to do that tonight. The book on the mind, I did write a bump Scott, my both 2 hours in on that. So I just have my training tonight, 25 minutes on that.
Are you doing the piano on a real piano? Or
It's a Yamaha that's
oh,
brought
no,
over
that's
from
okay.
Tokyo.
That's still a
Yeah.
piano, but you're not doing it on the phone. Somebody's doing something
No,
on the phone with
I want to at least have my hands know what a real piano is like. So that's good there. Now, I should mention here too, with your goals, again, I said this last week and maybe address it almost weekly. You're going to have ups and downs. You're going to have times when you just, it just starts rubbing you a little bit wrong. I mean, we're going against the grain now. I mean, you're adding new habits. You're making forward progress. There's always going to be inertia at first, getting started on it, and there'll be some days that you don't do so well on. But you don't want to get down about that. But you just want to have it, try to make it a better day the next day. And just look at it. We're going into our June challenge now. Okay, so we've done our May challenge. Hopefully, at least you can say that you're a little better off than you were when you first started. Now it's only been a couple of weeks there with you, Joyful, but most of us, have pretty much from the beginning of the month, and we should be able to at least say, yeah, I've developed a little bit more of a skill here. And Espanol can speak a little bit there. Yo bebo leche, I drink my milk. All that good stuff. So we should have some skills and something to show for it a little bit. And certainly in the health area, I would hope that all of us are a little bit better off than we were when we began. That's when it's easier to kind of measure. Your mind and your spirit one is going to be a little more difficult because it's not always so linear, not so straightforward. But again, over time, especially when it gets months at a time, you'll be able to look back and say, yeah, I'm a little more stable, I'm more mature, and better balanced than I was. So just keep forward progress moving. Really, it's the only way to go. I mean, we all know what's going to happen if we don't make forward progress and make a concerted effort. Then we're just getting older each month and each year. And we're not really maturing. Our health is going down a lot faster. So this really is the only way to go, and it's actually the least painful, because the other way is much more painful, especially when you start looking at the health problems and things most Americans will be running into. That scares me. I mean, I have to say that I'm very, very forward progress. The carrot and the stick type thing. I mean, I'm chasing the carrot because I know how great that is to become more self-actualized and healthy. But that scares me to think, I don't want to go to a hospital. I don't want to have heart disease. I don't want to develop cancer. I don't want to have sugar diabetes. I don't want to have arthritis. I mean, to me, I'm amazed that Americans and people aren't more scared about that type of thing. I mean, just like a person smoking tobacco as much as they may want to, when they see the terrible results of that with the lung cancer and everything else, I mean, that would scare me. I mean, that, and with the food and the stuff there too, as much as I might want to indulge, you see what it's doing to your arteries and everything else. I mean, a little bit of good, healthy scare might be in order there as well. So that's another thing to consider. Now, let's see. Today, I mentioned the ones that showed up today. You pretty much, if you got done your goals, now we'll be doing the Motivation Fund payment today. Those of you who are online now that haven't sent your address, and I think I've got some of your addresses, but you need to send your address in by email. When you say that you did the lesson tonight, make sure you tell me that you did the lesson, answer the questions. Oh, there's supposed to be 4 questions during this lesson. I didn't say it. We'll hit it here, because if you didn't watch from the beginning, you probably wouldn't know. The first thing was, what was the abbreviation we used for the high-level person? PP. How do they do this? Those are going along. Okay, there's going to be 4 words. There's going to be peace pilgrim. There's going to be superficial life. Most people are surface level. Superficial life will be another thing. And then let's see, what was the other thing we talked about? The greatest video ever, which was actually the name of the video.
Yes.
So you just write that in, the greatest video ever. And which one other thing? That
Did you show the greatest video?
That's the one
Yeah,
that we
that
saw.
was a
that we
health
watched.
That's the greatest.
They call it the greatest video ever. And one other thing,
Well, they changed the diet was a good video too.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Maybe the Age of Peace Pilgrim when she
Okay, the Edge of Peace program when I think I might have had that
her
as well.
first plateau.
When she had her first plateau, which was 29. So 29 was the other one there. Okay, I guess it'll be a little tricky, but I'll have to go through the whole thing and get these. Especially, yeah, we got to remember have a 15-minute timer or
So
something.
what was the
Say
name
that.
to the high level person?
Oh, that was just peace program.
Oh, peace program.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
And superficial life was for what?
That's just the word that you put in superficial life. When you send in your emails or when you send your text in, that's all you do is you say, I watched the video, here's the answers. Superficial life, 29 years old, what was the other?
Peace Pilgrim,
Peace Pilgrim,
and
and the other one,
best video ever.
best video ever. That's all you have to do is write that in.
And where did they get the superficial life from?
It doesn't matter, that's just something I'm saying to make sure they watch the video.
Oh, okay. All
That
right.
was
You're
from
citing that
Peace
to that?
Pilgrim, we were talking about this, you talked about superficial life.
Oh, yeah.
Living there.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, don't get down and make sure you keep yourself momentum going and send in your address there too, and then I'll be sending out the checks tomorrow. And you'll get yours tonight, post-dated for June 1st. And then Wednesday, of course, 3:30, remember, we have the presentation here, and there should be several people coming, and it should be a really good presentation. Thanks again, we'll see you all next week.
Thank you.